Hey guys, it's Katie here with Life of the Mundane, and today I have a very special guest. I have my mom, Robbie, who is a homeschool mom of
22 years.
22 years, and has successfully graduated all but one of her kids who is still in high school. And so we thought we'd come today and talk to you guys a little bit, answer some of your questions. You guys ask questions on Instagram and Facebook, and thought we would ask those questions and hear from an experienced veteran homeschool mom and see what her thoughts are. So let's get started. So first off, do you want to just share why did you start homeschooling? You know, what were the decisions behind that, and what age kids did you have when you decided to homeschool?
Sure. I actually fell in that category of a reluctant homeschooler. We had 6 kids in 8 years' time, and a sister-in-law that was very pro-homeschool and was homeschooling her children and was encouraging me in that direction, and I was dragging my feet. I felt overwhelmed and felt like I could not add something else. So our oldest 2, Katie and her brother Ben, were in a private Christian school. But as we began to look at the cost of the next year, possibly adding our twins into the kindergarten program, we realized that this had to be, there was not a financial option to continue in the private school. And we were committed to seeking Christian education at the time. And so we felt like that was our option. And so we began homeschooling when Katie was in 3rd grade, Ben was 2nd grade, and our twins were 4. We had a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at the time, and just really went into it not sure about how that was going to work, but I think the Lord quickly showed us that it was the right path, partly because of the flexibility, and because shortly after we began our homeschool year, my father had a heart attack and was in the hospital for 6 weeks, and it allowed us to take school on the road. So we hit the road running, literally, with school books and hospital waiting rooms, and just really jumped right into the benefits of homeschooling.
Yeah. So if you could go back to the very beginning and tell yourself something, then the most important things that you wish you would have known when you very first started out homeschooling, what would they be?
First of all, I'd say that I'm going to spend a lot of money on curriculum that I never use, and that's okay.
And it happens to everybody.
Exactly. Everybody has those shelves that I bought this with good intentions, but they never made it off the shelf, or they did and they just didn't work, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But that caused a lot of stress in the early years, thinking that we're doing this to save money, and instead watching money be spent and seem to be wasted. So I would say, don't worry about that. Pass it along to somebody who can use it. I think secondly, if I would recognize that everybody's homeschool is going to look different, and spend a lot of years feeling guilt or insufficiency because I didn't have the nice little schoolroom with all the desks, and some do that and do it very well, and I admire them for that. But that was not our personality as a home. That was not our structure or family dynamic at all. And to give myself the freedom to create and to enjoy our style of homeschooling.
Well, I think one thing I remember you saying too a lot was realizing that just because a curriculum worked for Susie Homemaker over here, it wasn't necessarily going to work for you, because that was, whenever you think about homeschooling and you start talking to your friends about it, if you have anyone who already homeschools, they will tell you, this is what I use and this is what you should use, and it'll work for your family, and that's not always
right. And that's where a lot of the books on the shelves came from, because I was so worried about keeping up with this mother or that mother, and I saw what their kids were doing and doing well and excelling in, and I thought that was the silver bullet for my family, and it wasn't.
And that's good. And sometimes you buy curriculum and it sits on your shelf, and then kid 6 or 7 comes along and you actually end up using it. So
and that would probably be the third thing, is to not be afraid to change curriculum.
Yes.
We've been through a range of curriculum, some that I very much regret choosing, some that I love and would highly recommend and use over and over again. But even when we came to the 7th child, we completely threw most of what we had done out the window and started fresh, and that was okay.
Yep. Definitely true. I tried a lot. I'm the oldest, so I tried the gamut, which made me a really good homeschool mom, because when I got ready to homeschool my own kids, I'd already personally tested out many of the curriculums, so I kind of had an idea of what my style might be with my kids. Okay, so let's jump into some of you guys' questions for me. Kristen asked, what's the very first step that you take when getting started, or that you would recommend someone take when they get started? And, how do you keep it simple? How do you not get, overwhelmed by all the options?
Right. I would say, first of all, spend a lot of time in prayer. And check your heart for your motivations. Because I think that your motivations will drive your expectations. Mm-hmm. And to keep it simple, you want to make sure that your expectations are realistic that first year. Be on the same page with your husband as much as possible with that, and make sure that you have common goals in mind. I think as far as simplicity, every year we would begin the first few weeks by just starting out with one subject. Mm-hmm. And then we would add a second subject by the end of the week. And we gradually built up our days rather than going full force into everything, especially when we're trying a new curriculum.
Yeah.
Because there's that learning curve for the teacher and the student. And that seemed to help cut down on frustrations for me. Yeah. And feelings of not meeting my own expectations as well, to be able to give myself time.
That was the same thing each year. It wasn't just the very first year. Yeah. Each year it was sort of easing into it gradually. Especially as you add more and more students. Right.
And when you have that range of ages as well, mm-hmm. it gave you time to establish, is this schedule that we've worked out going to work well? Yeah. Where do we need to tweak?
Yeah. Because there's always something to tweak. Always. And that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's not a sign of failure. It's just a sign that you're doing it, and you've just got to figure out that. And I think knowing your why is something we talk about a lot on here. It's just understanding why you're doing homeschooling in the first place, because that will help you figure out what's the highest priority to start with. Are you doing it because you want to be, a big spiritual influence in your children's lives? Is it because your kid is struggling in school and you want to release some of that pressure, or you want to challenge them more? That's going to help you decide what steps to take next, and it's going to keep you from getting overwhelmed with all the options.
And if they're struggling, you know that you're going to need to set aside more time to work on particular subjects. And so you don't want to just go and find anybody else's schedule and go, oh my goodness, they only spend 30 minutes on each subject. This child might need
an hour and a half. Yeah, I knew exactly what you were That would be me. It might be longer. It's okay. Okay, so Elizabeth asked, how did you handle differences in each kid's learning methods, and especially when you're teaching multiple kids at one time? Because I don't think did I mention this? You kind of mentioned a little bit how many kids. There are 7 kids in our family, and 6 that were all very, very close together, and then 1 at the very end, a little surprise, and my fun baby brother. And so, you had a lot of instances where you were homeschooling multiple kids at one time.
Right, and so those early years, we did a lot of things together. We mm-hmm. did our sciences and histories and things like that, trying to do group type of things. In the later years, even with our high schoolers, when we had an elementary student, he would sit in and listen and thought that was the coolest thing, to be part of economics class or whatever it might be. But what we tried to do, I don't know whether we succeeded or not, but we tried to also have the older ones help the younger ones at times. Yeah. And that helped review their skills mm-hmm. as well, helped fill in my gaps with my strugglings with math and things like that. Some of my older kids got that better, and they could help the younger ones. And so it gave them that mutual working together as mm-hmm. well. But there are times that one set of kids is probably going to maybe not have quite as much of mom's time. And we just learned to kind of roll with that and know that some semesters we were going to focus more on somebody's skill sets here and somebody else's on this semester.
So some years it might be the high schooler mm-hmm. because they're getting ready to graduate. We need to make sure everything's in order. Or some years it would be the kindergartner because we're trying to get them to learn how to read.
Exactly.
And give and take. There's lots of years in between, so don't feel the stress to have to get it all done in 1 year. And I think that's something I've struggled with as a mom, is feeling like we have to achieve every academic goal or spiritual goal or whatever in 1 year, and that's ridiculous. God didn't give us our kids for 1 year. He gave it to us, over a period of time. We should make the best of that and prioritize what we're teaching, but understand that if there's a bad year or a rough year or a weird year, that's okay. It's not going to mess your kids up.
Our first year was that way. Yeah. In and out on the road, several hours away, in and out of hospital rooms. And I think that was good for me because it caused my expectations to go, okay, I need to see this as a benefit, that we can be flexible, instead of seeing all my lesson plans were out the window that I had spent all this time planning for and adapting for. And I think that's a really good point, though, that you do have to recognize that you're in this for the long-term picture, not for the semester.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And so there may be years that you don't finish a textbook, either because of scheduling, because of struggles, or because of circumstances.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually had this question asked many, many times in different phrases. So I'm going to read one of them, but I think it encompasses a lot of what people were asking. Okay. Is I'm always worried that I'm not doing enough or covering enough. You know, I'd want to know if in the end, did you feel like you had enough academically? And what did you feel like was the highest value? I mean, a lot of people ask this question of how do I deal with the mom guilt? How do I deal with the, you know, and I know that was a question that you asked because I remember that as a kid, always being worried about not having enough. So what did you feel like? How did you deal with that feeling? And then did you feel like it was enough? And then what did you feel like in the end really mattered the most?
Okay, sure. Sure, just 3 parts. So to be honest, the mom guilt is something that all of us wrestle with, I think. Whether others would look at our families or our kids and think, oh, they've got it together. Very few women that I talk to feel like they're the ones that have done that themselves. And the reality is it's really all by grace. So do I feel like I did enough? If I focus on what I did, no. But if instead of me looking at that and going, oh, I wish I would have spent more time on skill sets, on handwriting, on multiplication, memorization, all these things, and I can see all my failings, but instead if I look back and go and concentrate on what God has done despite my shortcomings, then I can celebrate and go, thank you, Lord, that you have filled in the gaps, and you have created these adults who are wonderful and productive and you know, are functioning in ways that if it had been up to me would not have happened. So I think that's the best way I found to recognize that as I recount my shortcomings, it's actually an opportunity to instead count God's blessings instead of just to recount my shortcomings. So I think the things I do wish I would have done differently, because we do have that responsibility to train our children, is I wish I would have emphasized scripture memory more. That's something that has never come as easily to me anyway. And so I can tell you the verse, but I can't tell you the reference. I can't tell you where to find it. Or I can tell you the concept. And I feel like in our day and age especially, I wish I would have spent more time just drilling that into my children so that it would drill it into me as well. With that, one of my big shortcomings was drill work, multiplication facts, and just those things that take rote memory and practice. And I think I could have helped them have a stronger foundation had I done more of that.
Well, and I think the thing with that, at least my experience with it so far, has been that sometimes it's honestly easier to do those bigger chunks of school, to do like a full subject, sit down and do this. But to do those 2 to 5 minute activities every single day, and it's all about consistency, it's better to do them for literally like a minute a day and do them every single day than it is to do like, okay, once a week we're going to just chunk it all together. And I think it's hard sometimes to maybe either forget it or it's easy to go out the window. So I know I struggle with that, with making sure that we're doing these things consistently. But we've been doing better this year with like catechism questions and things like that. And it's been amazing how much they've learned by just a few seconds each day.
And they can grasp so much. And I feel like that was something that I missed an opportunity there. And that was probably because that wasn't my bent anyway. I outsourced that to my older kids to have them drill the younger siblings on math facts. Well, they didn't like to do it themselves. No. Why would I expect them to do it without me inspecting it? You know?
I think that's important. And I think also when you think about those gaps, people always talk about, are they going to have gaps in their education? And I can tell you right now, absolutely, 100% your child will have gaps in their education. And that's if they are in public school, in private school, or homeschooled. They're going to have gaps in their education. And what it's more about is making sure that you've taught them the character and the qualities and the things they need in life skills, and then teaching them that love of learning so that and how to learn. So if they get to something in life and they're like, I don't remember this from school, they know how to go find the answer.
Exactly.
And that was something you always emphasized that I always appreciated, that I never felt ill-equipped, even if I didn't remember something from school or we didn't go over it as much, because I knew how to find the answer.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think that's the one thing that I really walked away with it all is I want to instill in my kids that love of learning. Mm-hmm. So it's good to know that at least somebody caught it.
Yeah. I think
and I think that that's the important thing is that. And then the other part of it was just what things really mattered in the end.
Yeah, what
I think
mattered in the end.
That love of learning and the love of and service of the Lord. And
and good communication skills.
Yes, good
I know you've mentioned that
skills.
before, like being able to communicate, whether that's in writing or speaking, public speaking or whatever. And
right. Being able to communicate ahead of time plans to other people and to be able to give a defense of the hope that you have within you. And those kinds of things I think are key. The Lord fills in those other gaps.
Yeah.
If you love learning, you can go fill in those gaps.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like you had a good base in biology or math or whatever it might be, those can be gained and garnered later on.
Okay, so another question that was asked, Katie asked, was there anything that you did as a parent in hindsight that you felt helped pass your faith on to your kids? Obviously, it's all ultimately up to God. We know that. But were there things that you did with us that helped pass that on?
Okay, yeah. I think that I really appreciated my husband's commitment to always be sure our kids were in church. That was not an option. We didn't skip Sunday worship for anything. If we were on vacation, we found a church to worship in. If we weren't visiting family, when we went with them. So I think that is an important piece of it. But I do like the fact that we emphasized as a family service in the church. There were years when I was directing VBS and all the kids were up there all week long.
All week long.
And we're a very big part of that, no matter what their age was. I liked the fact that we had an open home and would have people in not to just entertain, but people that lived with us, missionaries that were coming through, exchange students. The conversations that we could have around the table and our kids could be part of, I think helped them grow in their understanding of the world and how people function. It also was something that we were all part of. So whether it was service in the church or whether we were having people over to live with us or for dinner, everybody was involved in that and getting ready for that. And so that was something that I really do like, and I like seeing the fruit of that in my grown kids' lives and seeing them opening their homes and being active in their churches. And so that's been a real blessing to see the Lord develop that.
Yeah, and I think part of it is that it was something that was taught and something that we saw. We saw the active working out of that teaching. So it wasn't just taking us to Sunday school and doing family devotions and doing prayer. All of that happened, but it was also getting to see how that actually impacts your daily walk and getting to see how that plays out in our lives. So I think that was really, really helpful.
And I mean, it's always a sanctification process, right, for any of us, because it also meant a lowering of my expectations of what entertaining or hospitality looked like. When, I wanted things to look like Pinterest wasn't around at the time, but I wanted it to look Pinterest perfect, even though I didn't know what Pinterest was. But it's not going to do that when you have 6 kids under the age of 8 and then a baby when the one's in high school. And so it's really been a good growth process for me as well. In hindsight, I do feel like I wish we would have been a little more balanced in our time. Some of the things that I feel like were lacking in our homeschooling were probably because I was overcommitted in other areas. I don't regret at all my commitment and involvement in the church and in community and things like that, but I do feel like there could have been a little better balance.
A little more margin.
A little more margin.
Yeah.
So that maybe those things that I was so poorly, did so poorly as far as grading and getting feedback back could have happened.
I think to give you a little ease of mind, I think it's a little give and take. I mean, I definitely see how, for your sake even, just a little margin would have helped your sanity probably a little more because we were a handful. But I think that, I think it's just encouraging. All that to be said, I think, like we said, God fills in the gaps. And you can worry and worry and worry and worry and worry about what you're doing with your kids and how but that the truth is, it comes into what do you believe about God, and it comes into if you are worrying about how you're going to mess up your kids or something like that, it means that you think you're ultimately responsible for the way they turn out. And the truth is, it's only by God's grace that any of them are even alive right now.
Exactly.
And that is very true for many of my kids. I have a lot of daredevils in my family, but it's
many of your siblings.
Yes, exactly, exactly. But that they're alive, and that if they love the Lord, that's ultimately up to God. And so we are as faithful as we can be in what He's called us to do, and we prayerfully leave the rest up to Him. Yeah. And we can kind of shave off some of the guilt. Not to say it's not a struggle.
Right.
I mean, for sure, it's definitely a struggle for me. I know it's been...
Right.
It can still be a struggle even after kids are all grown.
Yeah. So I asked your dad last night. I said, so what would be the one thing that you would say to someone? And he said to not be so worried about what the end result is, but to enjoy the time that you have and to just treasure those moments. Because he said he felt like there were times we were too focused on what we wanted it to be or what the next step was, and instead of just saying, God, this is the moment you've given us. Let's just stop here.
And I am my father's stutter, so I struggle with that a lot. Actually, I was just doing some writing on something, and that was kind of the theme that came out, is I realized that I was always focused on the next step, and I didn't get to enjoy the moments, which is why I named this Life in the Mundane and enjoying those little moments, is because I need that daily reminder to slow down. We want to have vision, we want to have purpose, but we don't have to always be consumed with the next thing. Okay, so the last question I was going to ask is, what is the best way to prepare your children for college, and not just academically? Like, first of all, can homeschool kids go to college? A lot of people ask this question.
Yes, they do let them in.
They do let them in. Out of 7 kids, there have been quite a few that have gone on to school at college, and everybody's doing just fine. So
So to prepare them for college, we tried to look ahead. This is one of the things that we did plan ahead for. And middle school, 9th grade, somewhere in there, we begin to say, what types of things do you feel that the Lord might be leading you towards? That's a conversation that we really had all up until that point. But at that point, it became more focused, probably. And so if that's the point, then, the direction that you feel the Lord's leading you, what types of programs or schools might be of interest? And so then we would go ahead and begin to contact or look on websites and look for those schools and see what the requirements were for entry. How did they interface with the homeschool community? What types of transcripts did they need? So that was one of the more logistical, practical
and it helps because every college does have different expectations. So it's not, you need to know what your state laws are as far as what your requirements are for graduating, but whether you're private school, public school, homeschool, doesn't matter. You really should be looking at the school that you're wanting to attend to make sure you have what you need there.
It's very different from school to school. And the phrase that we used in our household a lot growing up is that we tried to practice personalized parenting. So we didn't have a one-size-fits-all, which created chaos at times because it didn't mean that when you hit a certain age you automatically got to do such and such. It depended on your maturity level and what was going to be a struggle for you, what was going to be a blessing for you. We talked about how every privilege had an equal or greater responsibility, and so those things came into play as well when we talked about college. So what are you equipped for? What are you being called towards? And so how can we help you get there? I think the other thing I would say, just that we spent a lot of time doing before college, is talking about worldviews. And whether or not our kids went to college, all of them have taken at least some college classes. Others have completed their degrees. Some are in the process of working on degrees now. But that worldviews curriculum, I think, is a key thing to help understand and have hooks to hang your beliefs on when you're confronted, even in another Christian school, just with different worldviews and different beliefs. So I would say that would probably be one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle that I would emphasize to someone, especially high school age, that they take time to really grasp what they believe, why they believe it, and how to interact with those who don't believe that.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes back to that communication piece too. As that's a big thing. If you can articulate, it's one thing to be able to know how to think, but to be able to articulate it is a huge, huge piece that that will help you whether you go to college or you have a career or you're married or you're a parent. Any of those things that can help push towards that.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
But yeah, any final thoughts or anything else you want to add?
Just give yourself grace, and
Lots of grace.
make your home a place that is a place of grace. So when you fail, because you will, we all do, and I could sit here and spend an hour and recount all my failures, but when you do, seek the forgiveness of your kids. Don't hesitate to let them know that you recognize, because they've seen it. So be sure you acknowledge that to them, seek their forgiveness, and that you seek God's forgiveness and move on. You know, don't let it define you, but instead let it work to purify you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
That's it.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. I know other people have. If you guys have other questions or, want clarifications on things, drop that down in the comments and we'll do our best to answer those. And if you guys would like to see future videos of my mom, she's like, wait, I only signed up for one.
Yeah, yes for one.
Drop it down in the comments. But anyways, thank you for being on here. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys are new to my channel, I would love it if you would take a second to subscribe. Press the little bell notification to be notified when new videos come out. And like and share if you found this helpful. Talk to you guys later. Bye.